Welcome back, everybody, to the electronic age. I'm your host, Adrian Saya, and today we have a very special guest. We have Kevin Bithell in the building. What's up, man?
Hey, glad to be here.
Of course. Now, if you had to explain to the audience what your passions are, how would you describe it?
Oh man, so everything music. So music, DJing, producing, throwing events, coordinating events, networking, meeting people, anything that has to do with an event or music or being with people and getting people to dance, that's what I'm all about.
I love that. Now, is there a specific genre you particularly focus on?
So mainly techno, hypnotic techno, but then also experimental, down-tempo, IDM. For my regular DJ stuff, it's mainly techno, mainly
All right.
real deep grooves and stuff like that. But I also DJ at Club Space for 420 Yoga, and that's more of like a chill vibe, like just hanging out, everybody's smoking and stuff.
So tell me about that. How did you get involved with 420 Yoga and this range of music?
So I started going to 420 Yoga just as a regular person, brought my yoga mat, brought some weed, we'd smoke, we'd hang out, and eventually I'm like, man, I love this. I love watching people do yoga. I love doing yoga and smoking, but I want to DJ. I want to make these people move. So I asked Lucas, who has been running 420 Yoga for the longest, asked him, what would it take for me to play 420 Yoga with my best friend Alejandro, because we DJ together. And he said, man, just bring me a mix. Put it on a USB, bring it by. I'm like, all right, cool. So we bring him this USB, and the week after I brought him the USB, he just so happened to not show up. And he told me, bro, the mix was great. If I ever don't show up, it's your time to shine. And that week, he didn't show up. So I just got up there and played, and the rest was history. We've been playing ever since.
That's phenomenal. And for our audience members out there who don't know what 420 Yoga is, it is an event thrown by Club Space, one of the largest clubs here in Miami. They give back to the community by doing free yoga events.
Every Saturday at 4:20 p.m.
At 4:20 p.m.
Except
Keep
for
it
this
steady.
weekend for Miami Music Week.
Yeah, because it's chaos around this time. So that's awesome to hear, man. And you got to connect. Now, do you feel like that helped improve your range, or have you always had that?
Oh man, no, it totally did. It totally did, because so I've always DJed techno, tech house, everything that's four to the floor and very rigid for mixing.
Mm-hmm.
But with yoga music and stuff like that, it's not as rigid. It's a lot more of a flow. So you learn to do these different types of transitions, and you learn to mix in a way that's different. And then when you get back to techno, it kind of is still there. So before I used to be like, okay, I need to go from A to B, B to C, C to D. But now it's like, why not A to D or A to C? Like it really allowed me to tell myself that it doesn't need to be so proper. It doesn't need to be so rigid. I can flow with it. So it kind of opened up the flow in that sense.
Amazing. Do you think DJing yoga style music has made you a better techno artist?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah?
because like I said, just getting out of that box, getting out of that techno box of like, because with techno, it's four to the floor, so you're always beat matching. Everything needs to be perfect. The transitions need to be on point. Otherwise, it sounds weird. But when you, with the other type of music, it's not, you're not beat matching as much. You're kind of like throwing sounds around. So when I got back to techno, I realized like, wow, I can totally do that. Like, I could play two songs, mix them together perfectly, and then I can just get a third vocal and just start playing that without beat matching, and it creates these weird moments, but it's helped me a lot. It's almost helped to like unlock a new level of DJing for myself.
Incredible. Now, when it comes to this, I know you do this in a group, a duo group. Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, so for techno, I'm part of a techno duo called Saprophytic. Very, very weird. The spelling is not how it sounds. And where the name came from is a saprophyte is an organism that feeds off of decaying matter, like a fungi or like a mushroom. So it's kind of like a symbolic thing where we go in and we take all of these beats that have existed and all of these sounds that have existed and kind of recycle them and give them new life and give them new meaning. And it's me and my best friend Alejandro, and we throw events together through Delta Division as well. So we do everything in terms of the event coordinating and the techno together.
So tell me about Delta Division. I remember this was one of my first introductions to you as well. I was with someone at the time who was like, you got to meet Kevin. They throw the best events, Delta Division especially. So how did that come together? How did you know that there was a passion for events?
So I started DJing house, tech house, and then I went to Movement in 2017, Movement Techno Festival, and I went with my partner Alejandro, and it was just life-changing. That was the moment I realized, like, okay, techno is the way to go. This is what I want to play. This is my passion. This is what I want to DJ. So I come back to Miami, and I'm like, all right, I want to DJ techno. No one will book me. Okay, I'm sending emails. I'm sending calls. No one responds. I'm like, okay, we want to play techno. We want to DJ. How are we going to do this? Let's start throwing events, right? So initially, it was called, what was it? We were just a bunch of friends. We called each other Delta Squad. So we had Alpha, Bravo, Charlie. I was Delta. And then everyone had, like, their code name. And then eventually it became, what was it? Delta Elite Division. And that was like the first official version of it. And then people would ask, why is it elite? I'm like, you're so right. Why? We're not like elitist. Like, we don't want to keep anybody out. It was just a name that we created. So it was Delta, D-E-L-T-A, Elite Division. So we got rid of the elite. We took out the E in Delta, and that's how it's been ever since, just D-L-T-A Division.
Delta Division.
That's where we are today. And once I started throwing events, oh my God, people were like, oh, can you put our DJs on your lineup? We'll put you on our lineup. And very quickly I realized, like, okay, this is the way to get into the scene. You know, instead of hounding people and asking them, oh, when can I play? You know, oh, come to our party and we'll see if you can ever play a slot. Started throwing events, booked as many locals as I could, and immediately people wanted me to play for them. And that's when I realized, like, wow, this is really something.
That's incredible. And I know that Miami has a scene that can be exclusive, like you mentioned. You try to apply to a million places to actually play, and venues just couldn't give you the cold shoulder, right? Have you found that because you started throwing your own events, you've been able to build a community, specifically the techno community, more?
Yeah, absolutely. And when we started Delta Division, the older techno scene was still in effect. Like all of the old heads, the people who've been in it since the mid-2000s, early 2000s, and there wasn't much of young people. I'm 26, so at the time, it was 2017. I think I was like 19 or 20. And there wasn't many of us. We were like the young guys. Everyone else was 30, 35 plus. So they were, the beginning, they weren't very welcoming because, you know, it's always like that new blood or fresh, like, you know, they're just trying to get into it. But eventually, more and more people my age started throwing events and starting collectives. We have Annex, Internet Friends, Stamina, Portals, Untitled Rhythms. I mean, there's so many of them now. And being able to build that community through our friends, not just through Delta Division, but through everybody, kind of like everybody's different friend group popped up a new collective. And we're at the point now where we're all working, most of us are working together to create a bigger scene and a bigger community. So it really has grown, and it feels very lucky that we're at this point to where we have like a big community in the scene.
Sounds like there's a lot of collaboration there. And one thing I know about the underground scene here is, well, it's very underground, obviously, when it comes to techno. And the venues tend to be non-traditional, right?
Yeah,
so
most of them.
Has that posed a challenge for you all? Because you always got to find a warehouse, a dark space.
In the very beginning, it was nearly impossible. The first event we actually threw was at a Kava Lounge in Hollandale. It was the only place that said yes. It held like 60 people. It was a super small event. But then that led us down the alley of like finding warehouses. And another big problem was COVID. Before COVID, warehouses were cheap because people weren't renting them out. They needed to get rented. After COVID, the prices of most warehouses went up by a factor of like 3 or 4. And
wow.
what was a $1,000 warehouse is like a $5,000 to $8,000 warehouse now. So it became a lot less accessible to the independent collectives like me and others. The best thing we have right now is Domicile. That is the best independent venue around in Miami. And there's also Boombox, which Boombox, they're doing some renovations, so they haven't been as active. But Boombox and Domicile, let's say, are the two pillars of the underground music community in Miami right now.
I love that. Now, you mentioned Domicile. Now, that, in my opinion, is Miami's best kept secret.
Right. Totally. Yeah.
If you could describe that venue in one way, how would you?
Oh, man. So it used to be... I'd say it used to be a lot more basic of a venue when it first came on the scene during COVID, and it did its job because there was no other venues. It came on right during COVID, so that was great. But since then, they've really created their own vibe. When you walk in there, it's unlike any other room you've ever been in. It's 100% domicile. They have they have like a structure in the center that you stand on. It's almost, what is it called?
Industrial.
Yeah, like an industrial, like rafters type of thing. The sound system is great, and just the vibe is great. So I mean, it serves its purpose in the community. It's like I said, it's definitely a pillar in the community right now of just a place for people to go and throw events. The owner of it loves techno, loves music, and isn't in it just for the money, which is always refreshing when you have someone at the top who actually cares about the music that's coming in and the vibes that are coming in. So it's good to see that type of support.
Definitely. I find it very rare, actually, especially with this kind of environment we're in. Everyone's trying to hustle, really just trying to get the most bang for their buck, and leads to hurting the culture, I'd say. It creates a feeling of exclusivity even further.
100%.
So let's rewind a little bit. You mentioned that Delta Division grew, you started throwing more events, the community started growing. For anyone out there who would like to do the same thing, what would you recommend they try out?
The biggest thing that I'd always recommend to someone who's just starting in the scene, whether you're a producer or a DJ or you want to be a promoter, you want to start throwing events, go out to your local scene, research your local scene, find out what venues are throwing the events you want to go to, what promoters are throwing the events, what DJs you're interested in, and then don't, because it's always like people just send a DM right away. Hey, I'd love to play a show for you. And it's like, I've never met you. I don't know who you are. And it's just like, no offense to anybody, but it's like, come show face, show your support.
Mm-hmm.
If people see you at their events every weekend, every month, they're going to remember you. Like, Hey, I was at your event last week. Oh, it was really cool. Oh, are you guys ever looking for DJs? Like, I always feel like it's best to do that organic approach. Really show up, really support, show face, and post on, repost stories. And people see that. People notice that versus just, hey, I want to play a show. And it's like, I've never seen you. I've never met you. You've never come to my show. You never support. So it's like, it just puts you in a different place from people like that. It puts you in a place of like, okay, this person cares about the community. They want to support and they want to see us grow. And then they're interested in playing with us.
I see. So it's basically like sales. You just got to make your intro, and you need to actually show that you care about the person you're trying to connect with.
Yeah, it's not just a transaction. It's that you care and that you're in it for the scene and you want to go forward. Because there's a lot of actors and a lot of people who are in it for today or in it for tomorrow. They want to get their booking and then they're out of there.
Mm-hmm.
We care about, and I say we as in the scene in general down here, we care about the people who support us, and we know who supports us. We know who's out every weekend. We know who's out buying tickets, and it shows.
Very true.
And that support is what keeps us alive. I mean, none of us are millionaires throwing these events. Like, we're all independently funded, so it's that type of support is like what means the world to us most.
Now, let's talk about techno and actually performing, right? One of the things that struck me was how your setup is not typical.
Oh.
You don't have CDJ's mixer. That's it.
Right.
What else do you use? Would you describe your setup?
So my setup is most similar to Chris Liebing or Drumcell, who are other techno DJs, and it's a mixer in the center, just like most setups. Instead of CDJs or decks, we use Traktor X1 controllers, and what that allows us to do is pick the track, loop the track, press play, press pause. But what's cool about it is each controller is 2 decks. So if I use 4 channels, I don't need 4 controllers. I only need 2. 1 on each side of the mixer. So it'd be channel 1, channel 2, channel 3, channel 4. And it keeps it a lot closer because with CDJs, they're really fun. I love to use them, but they're pretty big. So if you have 4 channels, you could be like over on here and then over here. Like, it really can be quite a mission. Whereas with this Traktor setup, it's a lot smaller. Everything I need is within almost, I'd say, within my shoulder width apart.
Wow.
So it allows for a much better setup like that. And it's just, I switched to Traktor to go back a little bit more. I started on a little 2-channel Serato controller like everybody does. I moved up to a 4-channel Serato controller. And that's most similar to CDJs. Mm-hmm. My thought was, okay, I have a 4-channel controller now. Now I go buy CDJs.
Right.
And then I got into Chris Liebing and Richie Houghton and Drumcell and other DJs like Dubfire, Nicole Modauber, who use these setups that are with Traktor and Ableton or just Traktor. And that really interested me. So I bought I bought the X1s, and I would actually put them on top of my controller. So I had this huge controller with these little Tractor controllers on it, and I started learning. And the thing is with Tractor, you have to, it's very particular. With CDJs, you can change your settings, you can change the brightness, the jog sensitivity, but they're pretty much, anybody who plays on them is going to have similar settings. With Tractor, it's almost like Linux for PC, where you have to program every single piece of the software. It has to be set for you, like what inputs go to the mixer, what settings you want for your controllers. So it takes longer to set up, but once you do set it up, it's your setup. There's no one that has a setup like you, and that ecosphere and that ecosystem. I just dug in so deep that it's like that's what I'm comfortable with at this point. Like sometimes when I get booked, promoters will be like, "Oh, can you just play on CDJs?" And it's like, I can, but I choose not to. It's not how I express myself through music for the most part.
I see. Now, it sounds like it could be quite challenging to the everyday person trying to do all these like programmable parts, right? Especially on a Tractor setup. But what you're mentioning is that it's more convenient. You see everything for what it is right in front of you in a very small space. So you're able to just quickly play these things, create loops. That was one of my favorite things to watch a DJ, is your ability to create loops on the fly like this.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Now, would you say your setup is what allowed you to get very good at that, or was it more practicing looping over and over and over again?
Yeah, so I've always been someone who likes looping. It's very fun because there could be 8 seconds left in a song, and now you looped it. Now it's 8 million seconds left in the song. Like it's up to you. So I've always used active looping, but definitely once I switched to Tractor, that just took off because the looping function on Tractor is a lot easier. With CDJs, there's one button you can press to put it in a quick loop. But other than that, there's like 2 buttons you have to press. So it's a little bit less accessible. But with Tractor, you just choose the loop and click it. Choose the loop and click it. So it became a lot more intuitive. And I'd say once I switched to Tractor, I was a lot more comfortable with looping.
Now, do you think that it inhibits your ability to perform when you're playing with someone else? Like, let's say you're going back to back. You mentioned you perform a lot as a duo. Does the other person need to know how to use Tractor as well?
So in my duo, we both play on the same setup. We both practice on the same setup, and we've both been using the same setup. If I was going to go back to back with somebody else, like whether it was Saprophytic back to back another DJ or just me back to back another DJ, it's not that hard. Usually it's a little bit intimidating for the other DJ because they see all the equipment and it kind of gets them intimidated, but it's the same thing.
Okay.
The way that I try to think of different DJ setups is like everything is an MP3 player, and you can always match an MP3 player to an MP3 player. I mean, in the 80s and 90s, they were using tape loops. That must have been insanely hard. So we have MP3 files. So any equipment, can be synced up to another equipment with beat matching.
Now, you find this with, it's still possible even with CDJs into your Tractor setup.
Yeah, 100%. So whether a DJ is coming on before us or after us, I'm usually the one that helps with the transition because it can be intimidating. Like if I'm going from my setup back to CDJs, sometimes we'll have to unplug a CDJ, plug in a CDJ, switch some cables around. But I've gotten to the point to where I'm just used to it. It's like a second nature. But I definitely see where it's intimidating and scary for people who aren't used to it because it's a lot. Like you can't stop the music. So you have to keep the flow going while everything's going. I've even had a time where I had to put my whole Tractor setup under the table and DJ under the table while my partner was plugging the CDJs back in on top of the table. So I'm like under the table, like mixing as good as I can. But, that's the cool part about DJing. It's always an adventure. Like it's always something new to experience.
Definitely. Now, for anyone out there that's listening and they're still trying to find their groove with either their sound or even their choice of equipment, what would you recommend they do so that they actually find that sound or equipment?
I would watch a lot of YouTube videos before you buy anything.
Okay.
Figure out whether you want to go towards record box, Serato, or Tractor. Tractor is what I'd say the least amount of people go for because it's a lot more intense. It's a lot more in depth, and they've kind of slacked, I'd say, in the last decade in terms of like most of the equipment that I use is like a decade plus old. Still works amazingly, like, holds up great, but in terms of like Pioneer and Denon, they've made so much equipment that's newer and so that's more accessible. So I'd say figure out what you want to do. I would always recommend getting like a little 2-channel mixer, a 2-channel controller. You can never go wrong with that. And you can learn what the basics of DJing are, beat matching, phrasing, transitions. And then after that, you're going to have an idea of where you want to go to. Do you want a 4-channel Serato controller? Do you want a 4-channel XDJ record box controller? Or are you like, no, I want Tractor, and then you go that direction. So I would always recommend a 2-channel controller. Like I started with the DDJ SB2. I think now they have like the SB3 or something, but anything similar to that, just a small controller to start. And ask your friends. There's so many people whose friends like wanted to be a DJ or became a DJ, and they have a little controller that they never use. I mean, I think I have like 2 or 3 of them. Like, ask your DJ friends, before you go and buy something.
Now, how about when people, so one common objection I've heard when anyone trying to go outside of Pioneer is you shouldn't learn anything besides Pioneer because Pioneer is industry standard. No matter where you go, people just have Pioneers.
Very true.
So do you think that should stop anyone from learning something else?
No, I don't think it should stop anyone. I think Pioneer doesn't necessarily have anything in their ecosystem that you can't learn anywhere else. Like if you were to use a Denon player or a Tractor player and you learn how to beat match and you learn how to phrase and you learn how to transition, if you go to Pioneer, it's the same exact thing. Different product, but you can only do so many things with DJing. So I'd say don't let anyone, including yourself, get you into a box of saying like, I need to do this to get this result, or I need to buy this controller to get this result. You can learn to mix on anything. So I prefer Pioneer over Denon, just personally. Denon makes cheaper and more accessible equipment. I just haven't used it as much, so to me, I don't really know how to use their stuff. But I know their CDJ clone thing. It can play 2 songs at the same time, whereas a regular CDJ can only play 1. So I mean, if you're trying to save money or trying to get more bang for your buck, Denon is definitely the way to go.
All right.
At the end of the day, it's just preference.
So I see that you obviously have a good grasp on what you need to do for DJing and audio, but I understand also you've been kind of dipping your toes into photography and more like production. Can you tell me more about that? Like why'd you make the change, or just really why the sudden fascination in it?
Right. So I've always wanted to do production. It's always something that I've been interested in. I have probably over 50, 60 unreleased tracks. I've never released a track yet. The plan is to, with Delta Division, open it up as a label as well, start releasing music from Saprophytic and from other DJs in the scene that we like. So we really like hypnotic techno. It's like very reminiscent of early 90s US techno and stuff like that. But I got into it because, man, it's like a whole other world. Like DJing and producing really are 2 different ends of the spectrum. It's like programming, and then the other one is more of like facilitating. And it's just something that I wanted to get into. And Ableton is a lot of fun. And as a DJ, I've always wanted to do a hybrid set, which would be like Tractor, all the channels of Tractor with like Ableton controller as well to include that. And that's like the end goal, but getting there is, it's a slow process.
Definitely.
And photography I got into because we throw events. I'm a DJ and I like the stars. And I was like, you know what? If I get a camera, because I always hire photographers, and I still do because like I'm not a perfect photographer, but for the events that I throw or the events that I go to, if my friend's playing something, I can just show up with a camera and take pictures. And it's something that I've always wanted, was just more pictures of my events, more pictures of me DJing, more pictures of my friends DJing. So my friend Danny, whenever I throw events, if he's there, he knows how to operate a camera. So it's like, boom, there's more content of me. Like there's more footage of me. So that was my whole idea of it, was just get more content, get more footage of life, of DJing, of, I also go out in my backyard and take pictures of the sky at night and stuff. So just stuff like that. It was a new hobby to pick up, and something I wanted to do for a while.
Nice. And I also understand you guys have done installments as well.
Right. Okay. So a big thing with Delta Division, and one thing is when we started it, we didn't want to just throw events. We didn't want to have a DJ setup, speakers, some decorations, and a crowd. We wanted to create an experience. So a big thing that we like to do at Delta Division is we create concepts, and when we market our event, The concept is in the marketing. So we had this one called Shifted Perspective. So in the marketing, you see a TV. The TV turns on. The TV's in this weird room, and the TV has the flyer. It has the event information, and it makes you think, or at least this was my goal, is to make you think like, where's that TV? Does that TV exist? Where's that room? You know, stuff like that. And then we keep doing the marketing with the TV. It keeps turning on, turning off. And now eventually you get to the event that we threw, and we have a real TV there that's similar to that TV. And we have some decorations that make the room look like that room in the marketing. So the whole thing is like you see it online, and then you see it in person, and it connects to this whole thing of like, oh shit, I'm here. I'm not just like at this event. I'm at this place that they were showing in the promo. And that's always my goal, is to combine music and art in a way that is just so unique that it makes people ask questions and hopefully have answers once they come to the event.
Wow. That's very powerful. And I've realized that the best events tend to be the ones that really encompass you. You know, like you are in a place that is filled with production, something that becomes unforgettable. It's just not just another DJ event. Now, when it comes to what songs you're planning on releasing, I know you said you had some that you produced. Is there a timeline for that?
So it's tough. I've had a million timelines. None of them have come true so far. But we have an idea for the release. We have a bunch of tracks that are pretty much ready to go. They just need to be finalized. And we have the idea for it. And it's most like, so we have this crazy laser. It's like a laser projector that we had to get FDA approval to receive. So it was a big deal for us. We have a letter that says, you know, from the Centers of Disease and Radiological Health, signed by the FDA, you know, president of the FDA, Delta Division, here you go. You can use this laser. So we post it up whenever we use the event. It's like, hey, we're FDA approved. But with that laser, we created this box of mirrors, and the box of mirrors, we put the laser inside of it. We put smoke inside the box, and it creates this. I couldn't even explain to you what it looks like. It's just a box of smoke and mirrors, but if you were to see it, it's not what it looks like.
Interesting.
So that's most likely what the
installment,
what the release is going to be based off of, and that goes back to the whole throwing the events. So we'll do the release, and the release will have, you know, pictures and videos of the laser box. But then when we go to release the music, like do that actual music release, we'll attach event to it, and that event will have the laser box as well. So we'll be combining the release with the event, with the music, and then everything, so that when people get there, they've already seen the album art, they've probably already heard the tracks, and then the hope is that everything clicks. Like, okay. Wow. We're here. We're at the laser box. Like, this is what was on the release. This is what we were looking at. Like, it's tying those things together that my goal is to do, is to really make it come full circle. Because that's how I view my artistic life, is just like a circle. And like everything I do leads to my next position on the circle. Like photography, DJing, producing, music, art, like all of it's in a flow. And the people who I'm trying to captivate are in the middle. And so it's like, I just want people to see that they're a part of it. Like that they're not on the outside of what I'm trying to do. They're on the inside, and it's just like trying to get them to realize their perspective on the situation.
So it all comes full circle for them.
Exactly.
And they can actually relate to your artwork more by creating an entire experience out of it.
Right.
So from this, I see that you're targeting a lot of aspects that are not just a lot of senses, actually, that aren't just sound, right? You're getting a visual, you're getting the sound, you're getting even touch, right? Because once they see the installment, they're like, whoa, like I can feel this, I can see it. So that is a great idea. Like, how long did it take you to come up with this? Is it something that just slowly?
The laser one has been a long time coming. We found the laser on, what was it, like an Instagram ad? And it was first instinct, this is bullshit. There's no way this is real. This is because they're showing what it can do, and it's like, come on, this can't do that. And then you figure out, oh, it's really expensive. Okay, maybe it's real. And then we go to buy one, and it's like, you need to get a variance letter from the FDA. I'm like, oh, okay, now
this is real.
This is real, yeah. So we receive it, and our first thought is, okay, we're gonna buy a bunch of cheap mirrors. We're gonna put them in the garage. And we're just gonna start pointing the mirrors. So there was this game that I played when I was young where you get a laser, and you have to make the laser hit a mirror at the end of a room. So you have to move a bunch of other mirrors around so that it hits that. And that was my idea of like, let's get a bunch of mirrors. We'll point one straight, and then we'll turn the next one, and we'll move the beam around. And in doing that, I was like, what if instead of doing that like separately, like mirror, mirror, mirror all over the place, we just put it in a box. Make the mirrors like a box of mirrors and put the laser in the middle of it. And when we did that, it worked. And it was like, holy crap, this is huge. And once we were messing around with that, we kind of finalized it. We created our first draft of it, and that's what we took to BU, which is a camping festival my friends throw in Lakeland. And I was expecting people to be like, oh, it's pretty cool, like it looks cool. Everybody was mind blown, and like I was mind blown, and it really showed me like, okay, this isn't just a small thing. This is like a big idea. This is a big concept. This is like something huge. And ever since then, we've been working on the version 2, and that's what we're working on right now is version 2 of it's called Hyperspace.
Hyperspace.
Yeah.
Love that. I could see you actually showcasing this as something like at Art Basel, where you can really display. It's meant for the display, the experience.
Yeah, our goal is 3 points this year.
3 points?
Yeah.
Oh, that
Art
would be
installation at 3
fantastic.
points. That's a big one.
Now, you mentioned art installation at 3 points, but do you feel like you have the network to put yourself in that position to be at 3 points?
I think so. What's really good about 3 points is every year they do an open call submission for art installations. So being that I do know some of the people who work at 3 points and some of the people who promote for 3 points, so I feel like I have some connections there that could help. But even over that, 3 points always wants to include the community. They want to include artists, artists that create art and artists that create music. They always invite them to do like an open house. So I'll be submitting through there, and I'm sure once they see the concept that it's, I think they'll see the vision because it really is different. It really is special, and it's especially for somewhere like 3 points. That's what they're all about, is creating those unique moments and those times and places that make people go like, whoa, like, holy crap, this is really cool. So
this is great. Now, for those of you in our audience who have never heard of 3 points, it is an art and music festival that takes place here in Miami, and it's considered to be one of the bigger events that happen every year. So great to hear that, you could even apply to put your artwork there, because that would be an incredible addition. Good installment overall. So let's talk about the crowd. When it comes to getting people at these events, techno can be very niche. Do you find that it's a problem to get more people to your events rather than something like Tech House?
So it used to be more of a problem than it is now. Funnily enough, I don't have it downloaded on my phone, but TikTok changed the world. TikTok changed the way that people view the world, and it also changed the way that people were. It changed the accessibility of things like techno to people. Now, when I got into techno, I was listening to Drum Code and Adam Beyer, Dubfire, Joseph Capriati, the basics, the people who you get into in the beginning. But with TikTok, what I'm seeing is a lot of the times they're seeing underground music and stuff like that. And I bring up TikTok because when I go to events now, I see a lot of younger people, 18, 19, 20, 21. And instead of doing what I did, where they go from, all right, I just got into electronic music, now I'm going to go to main stage, and then they grow up to something bigger. I'm seeing them straight up at Domicile or straight up at a techno warehouse. And to me, that's awesome because the accessibility is huge. It used to be a lot harder to tell younger people, go to this warehouse for techno, blah, blah, blah. Because they're like, oh, well, I listen to Tiesto or I listen to Marshmello. But now I see a lot less of that. And there's always going to be those groups of people and people who listen to those types of music. But I see it a lot more. I see a lot more younger people in the crowds, and I see a lot more faces that I'm not familiar with. And to me, that's always exciting. Like, rather than gatekeeping, I think it's great to see so many new faces in the scene.
This blows my mind because it really confirms a feeling that I've had, or really one experience. I went to Charlie Sparks at Domicile, which actually ended up being Leanne Roberts,
right?
Who, let me tell you, if you guys haven't heard of this lady, she kills it. But anyway, so I went there thinking, okay, this is going to be just the crowd, the typical crowd, way younger. I was blown away. I was like, whoa.
Domicile especially.
Yeah, people here are pretty young. Like, what's going on? So I asked someone, a girl, I was like, what what brought you here, right? Because you look kind of like it's like your first event. Like, tell me what's up. So she mentioned that she heard of Charlie Sparks on TikTok, and that's why she came out. And I was like, whoa, this is crazy to me, because like you mentioned, people usually follow the same flow. They discover a festival, they get into dubstep. From dubstep, they get into house. From house, they get into techno, and that happens over a long period of time. But this is just a one-way ticket.
It's straight. It's like through the door. And you know who I'd say is also responsible for that is Boombox. Boombox catered to, in a great way, the younger crowd, where a lot of other parties didn't want. A lot of other parties, a lot of other promoters in Miami was like, if you're not old enough to buy drinks, and if you're not going to come and buy a lot of drinks, we don't want you at our events.
Exactly.
Which I kind of understand for the reason of making money, but in terms of growing the scene and sustainability, it's detrimental. So Boombox did this thing where they allowed people, they had a lot more 18 plus events. They did some 21 plus events, but their whole thing was getting more people to show up, and they did. And so when they stopped throwing events because they're doing renovations, people that were going to, all the younger people that were going to events there spread out. They went east towards Domicile, towards other venues. So I feel like they had a big part of it as well in helping the younger crowd in Miami find good music and find different music.
So now you see more people at these techno events. Now, techno is obviously very niche, but it's growing. So when you throw an event, do you feel like now there's a variety in the crowd, like more people?
There's a lot more people for sure. Before, like when we first started throwing events, you knew who was going to show up. Mm-hmm. You knew there was going to be the same 30 people, the old techno heads, and then you knew there was going to be the same 20 people who were like the newer crew. But now I never know who's going to show up. I know that there's still going to be the old, 20 people, the 30 people who are always there, the diehard supporters. But I'm always amazed at who's there. At this event I played at in Virginia Key just last Sunday, half the people there I didn't even know. And I love that. Like, I love seeing all these new people and hearing their stories about how they just got into this scene, or, one of their friends told them to come to this event. And it's like, nice. You've never been to an event and this is the one that you came to. That's amazing. Mm-hmm. Like, that level of openness in the mindset. And I see the gears turning in a better direction for support down here. So
for those who are completely new to the scene and want to learn more about techno, who should they follow? What groups are really prominent down here?
So the groups that I would recommend following would be, definitely follow Delta Division, but we're not throwing as many events right now. I'd say the ones who are throwing more events would be anyone who's throwing an event at Domicile. The biggest shout out I'd have to give for someone throwing events in Miami right now is Gami. Ultra Them from Internet Friends, mm-hmm. and she does the Otherworld part. They do the Otherworld parties as well, and Gami has love for the scene like I've never seen anyone have love for the scene, and the way that they create events and bring people together is just insane. They throw events at the ground, they throw events at Domicile, and sometimes other warehouses, but those are the most consistent ones that are bringing the best consistent techno. Boombox also does really cool stuff. They just did a roller rave event.
Pretty cool.
Annex is really good. Those are great friends of mine. And they, like Delta Division, they don't throw as many events, but every event they throw is a banger. Nice. So it's something that like you want to be following them so that when they do announce something, you go. Mm-hmm. They're the ones who host BU, which is their annual camping festival event in Central Florida. Sure. And that's, to me, it's like a do not miss event. Like, you can't miss that event, and it's the weekend of my birthday, so it's like
it's a must.
It's a must. And I'm sure there's others there. I'm sure as soon as like I leave, I'll remember a bunch of others, but definitely anyone who throws events at Domicile right now
are on it.
Yeah, are on it. So there's a lot of choices right now in the scene.
All right. So what is upcoming next for you? Like, are you doing something with Delta Division? Are you focusing more on your own personal brand? What do you see yourself doing next?
So I'm going in a couple different directions right now. With the personal brand, I'm focusing a lot on the photography, but I'm also focusing on music, not techno music, more like experimental IDM, which is a late 90s, early 2000s hip-hop influenced experimental sound. And I find that genre very special because I was born in 1997, and the genre really existed from 96 to '04. So I feel like in my growing up, in my childhood, that was like the peak of it. And it's just beautiful. So it's called IDM. It stands for Intelligent Dance Music, which comes off very, very crass. So a much better name for it is brain dance, because that's pretty much what it is. It's just cool beats and breaks and sounds and things that just make your brain go like all over the place. And it's really cool. So in terms of for my independent stuff, that's what I'll be releasing, is like IDM stuff. And then for Delta Division, we're working on Hyperspace 2.0. We don't have, it's TBD. We're still working on it. We have to order new panels from New York, because before what we did was we had these big panels that were see-through and colored, and we used reflective material on the inside.
Okay.
So it created like a mirror, but it wasn't a perfect mirror. So now we're ordering panels that are mirrored on the inside. So it's a perfect reflection. So we're just trying to get the logistics figured out for that. We are trying to figure out a new event series, which is based on sitting down and hanging out on the floor, including the DJ, in like an intimate setting. So that's what we're focusing on right now, because at BU every year, they have regular DJ sets, which is from, let's say, 3 p.m. to 12 a.m., and then 12 a.m. to 6 a.m. they have sit-down sets. And those sit-down sets is the DJ equipment gets put on a small table on the floor, the DJ sits on the floor, everybody gets blankets and pillows and just hangs out, and listens to music, and is just chilling and talking. And the whole thing is like, you're not standing up, you're not dancing, you're just vibing and listening to music. And that's something that I want to explore a lot, because there's a lot to be had there. You know, there's a lot of crazy parties in Miami. There's a lot of all-nighters in Miami, but there's not enough of that, which that lends itself to more of a creative side of music, it's definitely not techno. That's more of like the experimental sounds. And so that's probably what we're going to focus on. And we're going to start throwing more techno events, but we're in the building phase again. You know, especially with Miami Music Week, we haven't even tried planning anything lately, but we're working back to it. I feel like Hyperspace 2.0 will probably be our first techno event back.
All right. Sounds like you got quite a future ahead of you right there.
There's a lot going on.
But I like how you're really focused on just the production and making sure the experience is all set for your audience. Yeah. Now, for anyone out there who wants to make their own art installments, their own production, where do you think they should begin? Because this sounds like a process that just kind of came out of nowhere, right? Like you're like, yo, we got lasers. Like
yeah. So the way that we used to do it is we would think of a concept, because I'm not an artist by nature. Like I never imagined that I would create art. I really didn't. I always thought, I knew I always loved music. I always loved creating stuff, and I like throwing events, but I never thought I would be the artist. So initially what we would do is create an idea, and then find an artist who could capture that idea the best and let them do it. And for some concepts, that's what we're still going to do. But for like the lasers, it's like, I can do that myself. And funnily enough, my step uncle, my aunt's husband, he is a stage builder in Chicago or in Illinois for TV shows and for movies. So he's done all types of productions. So he was coincidentally down here while I was building Hyperspace version 1.0, and I'm like struggling hard. And then he gave me all these ideas. So it was like, I would definitely recommend doing it with people who know what they're doing and working with people who are artists. You know, if you're struggling on finding that vision, you know, don't push something that you can't do and come out with subpar results. Go out to someone who can do it. You know, find an artist that can help you and help get that vision, because there's certain things that I can do. I can create a box and put a laser in there, but I'm not an artist in terms of like, I can't paint, I can't design very intricate things. So I'd say just don't bite off more than you can chew. Like, only do what you think is possible for you. And if there's something that you can't do, find someone who can, you know, and work with them and pay them to do it, or try to include them in your project if they see your vision and would not take payment, but it's usually kind of hard. I always try to pay people for what I'm doing because, vision doesn't get you food.
Agreed. Completely agree. And it's usually well more received and they're more
Right.
likely to
Yeah,
work with you overall. Fantastic. So when it comes to the people out there, is there anything you would like to tell them or like let them know that's upcoming or where they can find you?
Oh, man. So, Miami Music Week, I'll be bouncing around all week long. Come jump around. I'll be at Paradise on Friday. And follow Delta Division at DLTA Division. Follow Saprophytic. I think it's saprophytic.techno. And Kevin Bithell at Kevin Bithell is my individual one. And I'm just excited to grow in this community. I'm excited for if whoever's watching this, if you guys look us up and be like, oh shit, that's some really cool stuff. That's what I'm excited for, is to get more people, new people into the scene. And maybe even you're a DJ or you're an artist and you want to be involved, email us. We have a contact form on our website, deltadivision.com. We have a contact form on our Instagram at Delta Division. And, we're starting the podcast back up, but for the music sets. That's a big one.
So tell me about that. Podcast for music sets?
Yeah, so we have we get a DJ set, whether it's from ourselves or for someone else. And then at the very beginning, do a little intro, explain who the DJ is. And then it's almost just like a SoundCloud set.
That's cool.
Yeah, but we release it through podcasts. So it's podcasts, Apple Music, not Spotify because they don't do DJ sets anymore, and iHeartRadio.
Now, are you doing that behind a certain backdrop, or is it all going to be just all sound?
Yeah, it's just all sound. It's all sound just with a cover.
Cool.
Yeah. So we might do maybe some in video ones at some point, but that's a lot of work.
Now, all of this sounds like it could be very time consuming, right? You got a lot of different ideas. How do you go about measuring yourself and making sure that you can tackle each one appropriately?
So for me, it's all about being realistic. I'm someone who I need to be realistic with myself because if I'm not, I won't get shit done. And I like to be on top of things. So on top of all of this that I do, I work full-time also. I'm a full-time real estate agent.
Wow.
So a big thing for me is making sure that I'm planning. Like I have a planner on my iPad, I have a planner on my phone, and then I have a to-do list. So I'm always keeping myself up and also just delegating work. I can only do so much. There's only 24. I wish there were 27 hours in a day. I really do. But since there's only 24, I can only do so much. So, my business partner, Alejandro, he helps me with a lot. Things that I can't do, he will handle. And it's just about, I try to set short-term and long-term goals so that it's not like, all right, I need to do 70 things today and 40 things tomorrow. It's like what needs to be done right now to move forward and what's in the pipeline that needs to be done by this week, needs to be done by this month, needs to be done by this quarter. So that's how I've been helping myself a lot. And I'd like to say by waking up early, but I don't. I stay up very late and it's hard for me to wake up early. So that's something that will always help. If you can wake up early, you have more hours in your day. But, I'm not going to sit here and preach, wake up at 5 a.m. and, because I don't do it. But I'm usually up until 2 or 3 a.m. because it's by the time I'm home from work and then if I go to the gym and then I'm done, it's 9 or 10 p.m. and then I have time to work on stuff. So it really depends. I try to just be realistic and not be too hard on myself. And the whole my circle of artistic life thing is I do much better when I'm doing more things, because if I do one thing, let's say I'm producing and I'm going ham, I'm producing 3 hours a day every day. After 3 weeks, 4 weeks, I just end up dropping something because I'm not good at keeping one thing. So if I'm doing photography one day and I'm producing another day and I'm DJing another day and working on an art installation on another day, I find that for my brain and my focus, it just helps me because I'm always doing something that lends itself to the next piece on my circle, but I'm not doing too much. I'm not burning myself out fuck, I've been doing this every single day, 4 times a day for the last blah, blah, blah. Just doing, I need to stay consistent with a bunch of things instead of consistent with one thing every single day.
I see. So I love the way you map that out. And I think a lot of new people coming into the space or new DJs can really take that in, right? Just set some time if you want to become a better DJ and literally block it off into smaller goals. Today, I'm just going to learn how to beat match.
Right.
Tomorrow, I'm going to learn how to loop, and then slowly grow to become just a better version of yourself that ends up being badass in the space. So I can see that tremendous growth happening, even within you. I remember seeing you DJ early on, and then now there's a big difference in the sound, man.
Yeah, it's been a journey. And don't be scared to ask questions. That's something that, there's a lot of people out there who aren't good at answering questions, and they can be dicks about it, and that demotivates people, and that's the worst. Like, always ask questions. Go on Reddit, message me on Delta Division, message me personally. Like, if you have a question about producing or about being an artist or a DJ or getting booked, ask it from someone who knows, rather than never asking it, or being too scared to ask it. And watch YouTube videos. I swear by YouTube. Like, I'll watch the same YouTube video 7 times in a row, and then the 7th time I'm like, oh, I get it now. Like, connecting guitar pedals to a Zone 92 mixer, it sounds very simple. If you look at it, it's like, okay, they're plugged in, but I had to watch the same video 5 or 6 or 7 times, and my friend's like, bro, why are you watching this video again? I'm like, do you know how to do it? No. So like, we need to keep watching this video until we get it. So my biggest thing is just don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to dive in. And if you don't spend the time learning how to do something, if you don't spend the time questioning and fucking up and then fixing your mistakes and troubleshooting, you're never going to get better.
It's true. So one question I wanted to ask that I forgot to ask you earlier is, what's the best way to make techno more inviting? Because to me, it's one hell of sound. It's an incredible genre, but it's underappreciated because I think it's associated with the dark dens of Berlin, and it's all about the grunge, which isn't entirely wrong, right? That is a facet of techno that exists. But how can that be more appealing to the broader audience?
What happened on Sunday with the event that Untitled Rhythms and Artifact threw that I played at Virginia Key, I think that's a big step, is throwing good, proper techno events, not at 4 a.m. in a warehouse or a venue. By throwing it on a beach, by throwing it at more accessible places at better times, it gets people who normally wouldn't come out to be there, and now maybe they tell themselves, oh, okay, I could go out at 4 a.m. I want to go out at 4 a.m. to see this, but they would have never done that had they not seen it in another light. So I think throwing those more accessible events is very important. And I think also not being so gatekeeping and not being so, like, I consider myself a techno snob in terms of, like, if someone says, oh, like, we're going to go watch some techno, and it's like, oh, who are you going to go see? It's like, oh, we're going to go see Hardwell. Like, it's not techno. Like, you can be a snob about that, but it's very off-putting for new people to just, if they say something wrong and then you're like, oh, I really like this, it's blah, blah, blah. And they're like, no, well, that's actually this and that's actually that. And you have no idea what you're talking about. And it's like, we were all there at some point. Mm-hmm. I didn't know what techno was. I didn't know what the difference between, hypnotic techno and hard techno and whatever the hell. Like, I didn't know. And I would run into people who would be very gatekeepish and very rude about it. And it made me not want to learn more, and I'm glad I did, but I can see that being a brick wall for some people, being like, wow, like, people are being kind of rude to me. So I'd say just, for all the techno lovers out there, be nice to the people who are just getting into the scene, because we were all there at some point, and it's what it's all about. Is if we don't educate and we choose to guard instead, you're never going to grow. Mm-hmm. You're never going to get new people in. You're just going to, keep the same people in. So it's just all about having that open dialogue, not being a dick.
Not being a dick. So
just be nice.
More of the story here. Don't be a dick. And don't be afraid to produce, try new things, so that way you can keep growing as an artist, as a DJ, and show your artistry to the world. Really tie those emotional factors, really tie your audience and hook them in is a genius idea.
Yeah.
I think it's going to give you great success for the future. So this has been a wonderful conversation, Kevin. Thank you so much for joining me here today, man. And
it's a pleasure hanging with my boy.
Always, brother, every time. So when it comes to where they can find you, your exact handle, what is it?
So my personal one is at Kevin, Kevin, Bithell, Bithell. There's only 2 L's in my last name, but it was taken on Instagram. So there's 3 on Instagram.
3.
And for Delta Division, it's at DLTA Division. Let's see if I turn around.
Let's see it. Bam.
So
little flex there. Perfect.
So at DLTA Division, and for the techno one, it's at Sapro, SAPROPHYTIC, saprophytic.techno. If you type in SAPRO, I'm guessing it's going to come up because there's not that many other ones. But that's where to find me. And I'm looking forward to meeting new people and looking forward to talking with you again soon.
Of course. Well, you guys heard it here first. Make sure to follow those accounts. Get the inside scoop with Techno, with Delta Division, Saprophytic, and everything that's going on with them. And, of course, thank you all for tuning in, and we will catch you on the next one. Peace out. Deuces. Awesome, my brother. Great job. Great job.